Hi everyone, this is Darren with SimNation. Wanted to do a opening season video for WWPF, which is of course our Draft Day Sports Pro Football League here at SimNation. We're entering the 57th season. Yes, this league did actually start at 2000, so it's been going for a long time. And to my knowledge, I think it may actually be one of the oldest Draft Day Sports Pro Football League um, out there. For those of you not aware of the title, Draft Day Sports Pro Football is a Wolverine Studios title. I highly recommend taking a look at it. I don't know about going out and buying the version that we're currently running, which I think is 2025, because the 2026 version should be coming out relatively soon. But let's dive right in. So this is going to be an interesting season for the 57th season. It'll be the first season that we've had in a long time without Peter, who was the coach of the Oakland Raiders. Peter was probably one of the better coaches in the league, and he definitely showed that by winning a whole bunch of titles over the course of his time in Oakland. Also, we have some new coaches in the league. I'll talk about that. Plus, we have some coaches who have moved teams, and that could create some interesting dynamics. But with that, let's just dive straight into kind of the season and talk a little bit about what to expect. What I would say is that this season should be pretty interesting. We'll look at the predictions first. So in the North, I'm predicting Detroit to win that with the runner-up being Green Bay. I don't know if Green Bay will be second because DWK is no longer there. He is now at the New York Giants. So that should create some interesting dynamic there in terms of it. Superman is still at Detroit, so there's a good chance Detroit could win that, but we'll talk a little bit more in detail. Uh, Unless something really strange happens, Carolina will win the South. Invisible just he pretty much controls that division at this point. The East should be a lot more competitive than normal because you have Templar at Dallas, Udo at Washington, and DWK at the New York Giants. So it'll be interesting to see how that one shapes out. I'll talk about that in a second. The NFC West has been wide open for a while now. I mean, you have Simon at Arizona, you have Stuart at San Francisco, you have Barry at LA, and trying to remember what the other team. Seattle is of course on CPU, but has a pretty decent team. So that one I expect like the East to be pretty wide open. In the North, every year Cleveland is picked to win this. Every year Pittsburgh wins it. Those will be the two teams to really keep an eye on as the season goes on, because they both will be battling it out for the North title. Um, the South, I really think that it's going to be really hard to unseat Bama at Tennessee. He had a really great season last year. I kind of expect him to have another great season this year. Houston, who's on CPU, likely will come in second, but it'll be interesting to see what SB Young does with Jacksonville. In the East, it's going to be pretty wide open. It's going to be potentially all four teams can compete. Soa has a good team at Miami, but after what was really kind of a shocker season for New England last season with Shark, I do expect Shark to be back. And then, of course, you got the wild card, which is Kev at New York. And Buffalo, who is a CPU team, is pretty strong. All bets are off in the West. The West should be pretty wide open for the first time in a long time. I kind of look for Prince to win this division. Peter's not at Oakland. Oakland didn't have the best offseason without him. They had some key attrition, but they still have a pretty good team. If you want to join our league, Oakland's probably the place to go. But keep an eye on Denver. Also keep an eye on really Denver. Kansas City could compete. Who's a CPU? This is one of the few divisions where most of the division is actually CPU. San Diego has a pretty decent squad. So does Kansas City. So does Oakland. And if you want to join the league, that would be a great place to go. So if you look at this, there are only like two of these I probably massively disagree with, but we'll go through each of the divisions and talk a little bit about that. So let's start with the NFC North. Sorry about the cough. So at Minnesota, you have Starfinder, Chicago's Cotton, Detroit is Superman. Um, I think this one's really going to come down to between Detroit and Minnesota. I think Minnesota has a decent team. It'll just be interesting. Can Starfinder bring all the pieces together? The dark horse in this division is Chicago. If Cotton can get all the pieces working well together, he should be able to make a run. But right now, if I had to pick a person to win the division, it's going to be Detroit. Green Bay, we'll see how well they ride off the direction that they had from DWK previously, but I don't know that they're going to be a player. I think in the North, because of how competitive the um, West is, there is the potential that the North could put two teams in, and if that happens, it'll probably be Minnesota and Detroit, um, with Detroit being the division winner. In the South, all roads lead through Charlotte, which is Carolina. Invisible he has built a dynasty there. And it's going to be really hard to unseat him from that dynasty, given how well he's been playing. So if you look at Carolina and just our history, what you'll quickly see is ever since Invisible showed up, he's been dominating. So he's won what, 3 championships, been in the championship game at least another 3 or 4 times. So it's going to be really hard to unseat him. I think if any team is going to do it, it could be Tampa Bay under MBB Mets. I just don't know that they have the right pieces yet to do it. Atlanta's a good CPU team. They made a pretty deep run last year. New Orleans, if they can put the pieces together, could too. Um, I I think that there's the potential for 2 teams to come out of this division into the playoffs. But given how strong the West is, I'm not. They're going to have to be pretty strong, and that will probably be at the detriment of a team from the North. But definitely Carolina will make the playoffs if they are not the number 1 seed or number 2 seed. Uh, the East, again, talked about this before. They are really wide open. Templar has traditionally and historically been the proverbial man, if you will, in the division. I just don't know that this team is going to be able to hold together. He's had a few seasons where his season got derailed by injuries. And if you see, not the best track record, but a 7-9 record some years in the East will actually get you the championship, the divisional championship. New York, mentioned DWK moving here. New York has a solid roster. The only concern I have with was getting rid of Whitten, but I mean he's done a good job of replacing it with the quarterbacks and running backs that fit his system, and he had a really good draft. So I think right now I would probably be leaning towards New York to win the division, with Dallas being a playoff team. Udo has probably had some of the worst luck I've ever seen of a coach in the league. Um, he always puts together good teams. He thinks through his roster on how he wants it to play, and then just they don't live up to the billing. This team is actually pretty good this year. The only concern I have is he has some really bad depth issues that could come back to haunt him on offense. Um, but if you look at it, he has a solid quarterback in Newman. Newman is one of the better quarterbacks in the league, so he should be able to do that. Philadelphia, I don't see them competing. They may be competing for a number 1 draft pick. Now, when you get to the West, this recently has been really Barry's territory at Los Angeles. He has done a very, very good job, as you can see, where he's not only made the playoffs, but he's making deep runs in the playoffs. And a lot of that hinges on Goldman, who is a star quarterback. He's got a really good receiving core. The only problem that traditionally has derailed Barry a little bit is defense. And hopefully, I think he can solve that this season. Because if he does, he will definitely compete against Invisible for like the top team. And as you can see, one of the challenges that he kind of has a little bit is a matter of speed on his line, but his secondary has gotten faster, which should help them. Now, the other team to keep a really strong eye on, other two teams actually, is Arizona. Simon has done a good job with Arizona. It's a hard place for a team to win, but he's got a good quarterback in Payne. And he's got a pretty solid team, and he's going to compete for not only the division but also potentially for um, a wild card spot. And then of course you have San Francisco, which is Stuart. Stuart hasn't had probably some of the best run of luck recently, but as you can see, he's been in the playoffs 3 straight times after a bit of a lull where he wasn't able to get in. He's got a really good quarterback in Asa Garcia. Um, Running back wise, he's got Flores, who is a pretty decent running back, and then he's got strong options. He tends to be one of the stronger defensive teams in the league, so we'll see how that plays out. In this case, I think that Los Angeles wins it, and I think San Francisco and Arizona are competing for that wild card spot. One of these two teams will make the playoffs, if not both. Uh, Number one seed wise, I think it's Carolina because I think I give them a little bit of a nod over LA only because of the defense that they have. Um, but it's going to be close. Number two seed will probably be LA. I'm predicting Detroit to win the North. I predict New York to win the East. And then I think Dallas and San Francisco will likely be the two wildcard teams. And chances are, like most years, I'm going to be wrong. Uh, in an, in the AFC in the West, I think Oakland is just a hard team to beat, but without Peter, they're a lot more beatable than they were in the past. I think that Prince has historically done well up until recently, and he's had to live in the shadow of Peter the whole time that he's been in the league. I think that this is a team that could really make a deep run. He has two good quarterbacks in Kilpatrick and Mojica. He's really good at throwing the ball. Again, like kind of Barry with LA, his defense at times is somewhat suspect. But I think that if Oakland doesn't win this division, I think it's the year that Denver does. I do see Denver really making it competitive for the playoffs if he doesn't outright win the division. Same thing with Oakland. Whichever team doesn't win the division likely will be very competitive towards the playoffs. In the case of New York, Kev has done a really good job of rebuilding this team. You can see he has Herman, who is one of the best young quarterbacks in the league. He's completely rebuilt his line by now. He got a pretty solid wide receiver core. He got Torres back from Pittsburgh, mostly because I needed to pick back. And then he's got really the beginnings of a strong defense. So I think that this could be the year that we start to see Kev really start competing for this division title. And he competed for it last year. It's just I think he was missing a couple pieces. New England has historically been probably the man in this division. Uh, and I think Shark just had an off year. He still made the playoffs, but he had to fight for it a lot more than he's used to having to fight for it. So I think, again, the biggest concern I have with Shark is the same one that I had last year, which is I don't think Shank is a long-term option for a quarterback. But if he gets into the playoffs, I think Shark is going to be dangerous. He has a really good defense, and outside of probably just Trigger Man for the offense, that's really, I think, the only thing that may hold him back. He will definitely compete for the division, if not a playoff spot. And then the last one is, of course, Soa with Miami, who had a really good run last year. He made it into the playoffs and knocked Peter out, if I remember correctly. And he has a pretty solid team again this year. He picked up Whitten, and that immediately makes you a title contender because Whitten has historically been one of the best quarterbacks in the whole league. He's got a pretty strong backfield. He's got a lot of different strong offensive options. His defense is pretty solid, although maybe not as solid as some of the other higher tier teams like Tennessee and Pittsburgh. But just with the addition of Whitten, He could make a very strong run at the playoffs and potentially even at a title game. But it's going to really come down to between Miami, New York, and New England. Don't look past Buffalo. Again, Buffalo has Long at the quarterback, who's really good, and they have a really solid team despite being on CPU. The South is going to be easy. All roads lead through Tennessee. I don't think anyone's really going to mess up Bama this year. Bama has really turned this team around. Last year, 15-1, just really, really strong across the board, and it's exciting to watch what he's done now. He's got good depth. The only issue I think that I worry about is he has a couple areas where he may not have depth, like at wide receiver. But generally, he has done very well. I think it was Schaefer last year was the quarterback that really led them. And you can see he had a really strong year. So look for them to do it again this year. I don't see another team really coming out of this except for maybe Houston. No shade to SB Young at Jacksonville. I just don't think that team's ready yet to compete. Bates will help Houston compete for a wild card position, but I don't. I think just given the strength in the East and in the West, I don't see anyone getting a wild card out of the South. Uh, as per the usual, it's going to be Pittsburgh's division to lose likely. Pittsburgh probably has one of the strongest defenses in the league. The offense is really built around the run. But I think if this is the year for Cleveland to capture the title, it'd be this year. That's kind of redundant, but anyways, I think this isn't one of the better Pittsburgh teams that they have put on the field. They have some question marks on the line. Their defense, though, is solid and strong. So this will be one of those years where you see Pittsburgh relying a lot on their defense. Cleveland, hats off to Bio. He has completely redone this roster and he's made it really strong. I shot a lot of shit at McKnight last year about I didn't think he'd be a good quarterback, and he was a good quarterback. So I think that with the good draft that Cleveland largely had, this is the year that they will turn it around and really start driving towards it. They could win the division this year. In fact, it's probably the year that they have the best chance. Look for Pittsburgh to make the playoffs regardless. Um, I think Pittsburgh's defense and the rushing game that they have is too strong not to make the playoffs. But weirder things have happened. Lackey's back up now to London. I do like this Cleveland squad. I think that they can go toe to toe with Pittsburgh. I don't see Cincinnati or Baltimore really doing it. Right now, if I had to pick, I think Tennessee's probably the 1 seed, Pittsburgh's probably the 2 seed, Cleveland's in the playoffs. Uh, and then you'll see that likely, I'm just going to say it, New York wins the division, Denver wins the division here, and then it's a toss up with Oakland, New England, Miami, and Cleveland for the wild card. Prediction for this year's Super Bowl, I think it'll be Carolina versus Tennessee. Now, a lot of time in between, and we'll see how well that holds up over time. But it should be an exciting season. It should be a pretty wide open season. So I'm looking forward to see what happens. If you're interested in this league, we have a lot of openings. I mentioned a couple. Green Bay is an open team. Atlanta, New Orleans, New Orleans, Atlanta, New Orleans, Philadelphia, Seattle. Of those teams, I think Seattle is probably the best of them. And then Cincinnati, Baltimore. Baltimore's a pretty good team. Houston and Indianapolis. Houston has a good team. Buffalo's a really good team. Of course, the best team in the AFC to take if you're joining the league is Oakland. Kansas City's also up there. So we'll see how this all plays out. I have the league in the Discord in there if you want to join us. People have asked, we won't adopt 2026 until the season ends. And on the college side, SNCFL will not be moving to 2026 until that season ends. So if you're interested in joining us here at SimNation, Discord will be in the link. Hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.